hell is going to be Alabama's offensive and defensive coordinators in 2023? Really kind of interesting to me, right? Because Nick Saban has to fill both the coordinator positions on a team that won 11 games, right? Beat the hell out of the Big 12 champions in the Sugar Bowl, right? That's wild. But Pete Golding took the same job, defense coordinator at Ole Miss, and then, of course, Bill O'Brien took a former job back in New England Patriots where, frankly, they need him in the worst way because they got defense coordinators out there calling offensive plays, and Raheem Morris is the only guy that I've ever seen make that work. By the way, if you need a head coach, maybe you give Raheem a call. I know D'Amico got a call. Good on D'Amico. Just Raheem, give him a call. Anyway, so now that you know that Bill O'Brien is gone, Peter Golden is gone, the question isn't necessarily who fills those roles, although I'll give you some names. It's what is Nick Saban's plan in 2023 and beyond? Because is he going to stay inside of his coaching tree, which is formidable, talk about that in a minute, or outside of his coaching tree to try to do something a little bit different? And I think this is a very interesting spot for Nick, because as much as I love the man, and I do love the man, and I really love his get down, and I love the way he changed how people view LSU, changed how I and others view Alabama, and has been consistent, right? And for all intents and purposes, is a very pleasant man, even if he doesn't always seem to be one. It's about setting Alabama up for what the next 10 years are going to look like, because Nick is past 70. I don't plan to see him coaching past 80. I would like to, but I don't plan on it. And I don't think, frankly, should anybody else. So his next hires, I believe, have to be indicative of the kind of future that he wants Alabama to have and what the future of offense and defense looks like. Because quite as kept, Nick ain't been the quickest to adapt or lead any sort of change in the sport. As a matter of fact, he is old school like you read about. This is a man who would shame other coaches because they could not tell him how to take a snap from center, even though, as he said, you can get afar in this game now with computers. Love that man. It's like, we used to have to cut film. Y'all don't even have to cut film anymore. It's like, yeah, coach, we have to cut film on a computer. I had to actually cut film for sessions. Like, he had to go uphill both ways. It really did, because you look into him at West Virginia working for his father, Big Nick, it's a whole get down. And I really love it because he's been able to keep that every step of the way. So him hiring inside or outside is also going to be indicative of, well, does he want to keep to the process? Or does he think we can introduce somebody new to the process? Now, offensive coordinators, I think, is interesting here. We're going to go ahead and tell you that, one Ryan Grubb, who was interviewed for the job on Monday, took himself out of the job, right? So that just makes a lot of sense. He was, he is the offensive coordinator at the University of Washington, where, Kalen DeBoer and he engineered an offense that had 500 yards offense game, 357 through the air. Mike Penix Jr., who looked like damaged goods at one point, looks like one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the Pac-12, but in the country in 2023. The rub, I think, is that Ryan Grubb got a pay raise to $2 million annual in December. I don't know that Nick Saban feels like he should have to pay $2 million for an offensive coordinator from the University of Washington. That's me, though, and I can understand why you might take your name out of that if he doesn't want to ante up. If you want to take like $1 million pay cut, that's probably not going to be enough to get him out of Seattle, which means that we're still looking at an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama. Perhaps they hire somebody by the time this comes out, maybe not, but also take into account you have a quarterback derby on your hands right now. You have two different styles of quarterback, too. You have Jalen Milroe and you have Ty Simpson. Milroe is much more of a threat with his legs, much more athletic. I put him in the Jalen Hurts category of a guy that can sling it, but also a dude that you have to respect and play 11-man football with. And Ty Simpson's a little bit more towards your Bryce Young. I want to sit back there, scan the field. I only want to scramble to make a throw as opposed to go get the first down, though I could do that too. I'm really interested to see what this looks like, and who he hires is going to basically tip his hand as to who he thinks ought to be the starting quarterback in 2023 for the University of Alabama. Now, a couple names I want to get out of the way. Holman Wiggins, wide receiver coach at Alabama, basically since Billy Napier gave up that job. I got to meet Holman when he worked at Tulsa and was running backs coach of all things, put Trey Watts on game. Went to Alabama, turned out guys like, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. You get what I'm saying? Like, he's been a gold mine over there. Not only is he developing, he is not missing. They had excellent wide receivers at the University of Alabama since Nick Saban decided, fine, y'all want to go up tempo? Y'all want to make me catch up to y'all where I can't play murder football anymore? Cool, we'll do that too. We'll hit you for 50 a game. And that's what they do. Another guy to put on your radar is Josh Gaddis, recently fired from the University of Miami after 1 year, a year after winning the Broyles Award as the, best assistant in football, offensive coordinator in Michigan. Engineered an offense that beat Alabama, that beat Ohio State and won a Big Ten championship and made the college football playoff. Maybe you want to bring that guy back to Alabama, where he was a co-offense coordinator with Mike Locksley, who was head coach at Maryland. Another name to throw at you, Freddie Kitchens. Yeah, remember him? He's an analyst at South Carolina. He also was a grad assistant for Saban in 2000 at LSU and, of course, the quarterback in the University of Alabama and a former head coach, right? Cleveland Browns, such as it was. I had a lot of fun watching Freddie Kitchens call plays for Baker Mayfield, but I'm in the minority on that. And not just because I'm not a Browns fan. Now, another name that I want to throw at you, or two. One is kind of out of left field, but I'll get there. Duke offense coordinator Kevin Johns feels like a nice fit because of what he was able to do with Riley Leonard at Duke. Riley Leonard, 2,700 yards a game, 700 yards rushing. That's a dual threat quarterback at Duke where they won football games. And I feel like if you want to go the Jalen Milroe route, that's a way to go. Another guy that fits that same mold, that has done the most ever with a quarterback not named Tom Brady, Baltimore Ravens former offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Now, the reason I say has done the most with a quarterback not named Tom Brady is because Greg Roman made Colin Kaepernick into a Super Bowl contending quarterback and produced the only other unanimous MVP in the history of the National Football League. I'll say it again. There have been two unanimous MVPs in the National Football League. One of them is the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. The other is Lamar Jackson. So as much noise as people want to talk about Greg Roman's offense, I watched that man use that offense to engineer the best season by any quarterback not named Tom Brady, do the most at Buffalo with Tyrod Taylor in that offense. And again, I say, coach the team to a Super Bowl, the Niners, underneath Jim Harbaugh, of all people, with that offense. If you want to throw a little bit of a wrinkle, you want to introduce a new kind of smash mouth football, you want to have people preparing for Alabama in a way that they haven't had to prepare for Alabama in years, you go hire Greg Roman. That's my pie in the sky, and that's my real opinion on that and what I really love about, the idea of Greg Roman being a college football coach is I think that offense just works in a way that it can't work or doesn't work as well if Lamar Jackson or somebody of his caliber is not running it. Now, one thing to add about Gaddis here is he's the guy of this group that runs an offense that looked a lot like what Brian Dable also introduced at halftime when he benched Jalen Hurts, to go into winning the national championship. Get back to that here as we get toward the end of the show. Best defense coordinator candidates is also an interesting list because, Jim Leonard is still out there somehow. Like, he goes from being one of the best defensive coordinators in the country to being an interim head coach to not having a job, mostly because he didn't want to stay on at Wisconsin. Like, it's not as if Luke Fickell did not want to keep him. But I think he's out there for a reason. Maybe he was out there for an NFL job. Maybe he was out there because he wanted to take some time off, which is becoming a trope that I really enjoy. Coaches getting used to. It's what Pep Guardiola used to do. He used to say, hey, I'm going to give you all I got for like 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to take a break because this job is a lot. Derek Mason's doing that. He made $1 million coach defense at Oklahoma State. He's decided, I'm going to take a little time to myself. Sean Payton decided he wanted to work with me. He wanted to be a colleague with me at Fox Sports before, going back to coach the Denver Broncos. I understand, Sean. I understand. I'm that big a deal. I'm not. I'm really not. But it's fun to say. You understand. I mean, it's fun to say I work with Shannon Sharp. Just fun to say. Anyway, I also like on this list Charles Kelly, who's defense coordinator at Colorado, because 2 reasons. One, Charles Kelly's coming from Alabama, and he's never been defensive coordinator at Alabama, been secondary coach, right? He also played a little football at Auburn, right? Couldn't find any stats, but he's on the roster. And I've mentioned that because Charles Kelly, who looks his age, was a defensive back at Auburn when Deion Sanders was a defensive back at Florida State. And somehow Deion, Coach Prime, has got to the age of 55 and still looks 35. I don't understand. Must be because black don't crack and he does his moisturizing like he should. I don't. I need to get on it because I'm trying to age like him. But Charles Kelly's also the other guy, the only guy I've ever met who claims Ozark, Alabama. And you don't know where Ozark, Alabama is, but you don't need to know where Ozark, Alabama is. You only need to know that I said Ozark, Alabama. And if I'm telling you this man claims Ozark, Alabama, don't you think he would love to be a defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama? He turned down the defense coordinator job at Auburn when Gus Malzahn was there before you get ahead of that. But I know where Ozark, Alabama is because my daddy's from the Florida Panhandle, and I spent time picking peas, cotton, and pecans in Campbellton, Florida, which is a stone's throw from Ozark, Dothan, and Dale County. All right? I just got it like that. I would love to see what happens if Nick Saban makes a run at Coach Prime's new defense coordinator. And then on the list, again, Jimmy Lake. I like Jimmy. I love Jimmy. Jimmy's always been nothing but good to me, and I was very excited to see him running University of Washington. It didn't go well. He was relieved of his duties, and he hasn't been back into coaching since, but I believe that he's one of the better defensive minds nobody talks about, and what a way for him to be back in the fold, getting a phone call from a guy like Nick Saban, who's already made a phone call to somebody else who's on a different staff at the University of Washington. Be fun. Glenn Schumann at Georgia kind of took his name out of that, or has been intuited as a guy that Kirby Smart's going to pay to keep. But like Glenn Schumann was co-defense coordinator at Georgia. Maybe he didn't want that co-title. Maybe he didn't want to share that with Will Muschamp. Maybe he's done everything he can do at Alabama. Wants to make like, I don't know, maybe Jermaine Burton, and decide he wants to transfer to Alabama after winning that championship at Georgia. We'll see. Then there's Todd Grantham, who, by the way, has worked for Nick Saban twice. I missed the first time, but that was back at Michigan State when I was like a child. And last year he worked as an analyst. So perhaps he's looking around going, I know how to work this defense. Todd, you also know how to work the B button on the controls. And the B button on the controls is for blitz, 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 blitz. I've never seen an offense I shouldn't blitz. Fine. You can do that at Alabama because they always got dudes. And the last guy to pay attention to here is producer Cat's favorite head coach. I'm joking here. I'm saying that sarcastically. And Jeremy Pruitt, because Jeremy Pruitt's tenure at Tennessee is very well known, synonymous with fast food at this point, and paper. If you understand, you understand. If you don't, he got 18 NCAA level 1 infractions on his resume. That ought to lay it out for you. But what's funny about this is, A, Nick Saban had a conversation with Jeremy Pruitt that was reported to CBS Sports. As for would it be breaking any rules for, Nick Saban to hire a guy with 18 level 1 infractions? No is the answer. Right, Auburn? Now, there is an SEC bylaw that says if you want to hire somebody that the NCAA has slapped with sanctions or infractions, not sanctions, infractions, you got to have a conversation with the president about it. The president has to have a conversation with the SEC commissioner about it. But Greg Sankey basically blurted out, hey, man, what the universities want to do is what the universities want to do. We just want to be informed of what it is that they are doing so we can, prepare ourselves on our end. But they want to make a hire. They get to make a hire. Right, Auburn? Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.